episode of The Cozy Corner of Cinema, episode number 182, being recorded on Friday, September 26th, 2025 at 3:26 p.m. I have a little bit of coffee left. It's not too hot, but it's drinkable, or it's not going to have a questionable aftertaste. Do you ever have like cold coffee that was supposed to be hot and you just kind of taste all the textures of it? It's, oh boy, I don't like that at all. But anyways, I know this episode is a little bit late, very busy week, didn't really get an opportunity to sit down and record something, but here we are, ready to talk about some documentaries. So last week I was mentioning, or I talked about, finally having seen Hearts of Darkness, about the making of Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now, directed by the late, great Eleanor Coppola. And this past weekend I was fortunate enough with my girlfriend to go see Megadoc, the new film from Mike Figgis. Mike Figgis, who is primarily a non-fiction filmmaker, I think most famously directed Leaving Las Vegas, which funnily enough actually just got announced for a 4K at the time of this recording yesterday from, I think, Shout Select or Shout Factory. I'm pretty sure it's Shout Select, don't quote me on that. But he's also done Stormy Monday, which I think Tommy Lee Jones is in that, Internal Affairs. So it's interesting how he got selected to do this documentary, if he was picked for this or if this is something that he wanted to do. But it was one that I was looking forward to for a while since I've been hearing about it. Megalopolis is a film I've talked a lot about on the show. It's a film I greatly admire, and I was very interested to see how the film would approach the grandiosity of a film like this. And it primarily goes over the making of the film, the pre-production and production itself. It doesn't really go too much into the actual journey leading up to it, which is a little disappointing, because this has been a 30-year journey for Coppola trying to make this film. And all the troubles he's had, all the troubles he's gone through, American Zoetrope, losing money. In the 90s, he's having to make, Bram Stoker's Dracula and The Godfather Part 3 to stay afloat. But I knew a little bit about the production of Megalopolis. I knew that it was a bit of a troubled production, but the film was surprisingly not as sensational as I thought it would be. It's more so, I get the sense of just trouble in the production, but not as grandiose as, if I keep saying the word grandiose, just bear with me. I think it's an appropriate word for this, but not as big as maybe some of the things I'd heard about it. But, as it is, it follows the process of Coppola really getting everyone involved with it. There are a lot of younger actors, younger, so to speak, and then a lot of older actors. Great interviews with a lot of the people involved in the film. George Lucas is in the film, and I really liked hearing him talk about it. It's funny because I always thought about, with Lucas talking about how he wanted to kind of make these smaller sort of personal films. I never understood why he never just did that. Because even after, he still could if he really wanted to, even after, selling off Star Wars and everything like that, if he wanted to just go out there and make something, I think he could, because I think Lucas is such a strong filmmaker. And it's kind of difficult to take the Star Wars part of it aside, but when you look at, I'm just such a fan of American Graffiti and THX. I think those are just such great films with a vision, especially THX. I really, really like that film. But Coppola, on top of the world, and granted, he never made something, even though The Godfather is one of the biggest pieces of pop culture ever, I think that Star Wars is so grandiose and it's such a franchise that I think Coppola was able to step away from The Godfather and not be overtaken by the shadow of it. Because the thing as well is that Coppola as well has, I've said before, he has 4 masterpieces in 10 years. Godfather, The Conversation, The Godfather Part 2, and Apocalypse Now. So he could be remembered for any of those 4 films. Maybe The Godfather and Apocalypse Now being the biggest of those 2. But my point is, though, is that even throughout the decades, Coppola, I think, has still been such a remarkable filmmaker in that I don't think he's ever really lost his touch. He has some films that I'm not that crazy about. I think I went through it last time of how, of the ones I've seen and which ones I haven't. But even, a film I always talk about, Textro from 2009, I think is just one of the strongest films. And the fact that it was so later in his career is just so remarkable, because I think every decade he has a couple of really exceptional films, and I think Megalopolis is one of those as well. But the film looks at the production of the film, and Coppola, who's older, and talks about how he's putting $120 million of his money on the line. And I've heard him in interviews before, he's saying that he's basically, he's in the latter part of his career. He's really got nothing to lose at this point, except for making this kind of really big project that he wants to, that I've talked about before, when people talk about the great kind of like filmmaker-driven films of the late 60s into the mid-70s, it's just a lot of really out there, really vision-specific kinds of films. Even something like, I don't know, like if you want to throw out something like Fellini's Satyricon, like such a big film, like such a strange film, but that's regarded as a classic, or even something like the last movie where you have Dennis Hopper who has complete control, he has complete carte blanche to do what he wants, and then it comes out and basically blacklists him from Hollywood, among other things. I do recommend that book. Everybody thought we were crazy about him and Brooke. Oh my gosh, what the hell's her last name? It's gonna bother me now. Brooke Hayward, about their experiences in the late 60s in Los Angeles. But I mean, the last movie as well, I think it took decades for it to, besides just not being very available. I mean, we have that Blu-ray now from, I think Arbalos put that out, which is, I think is a really, really interesting film, especially, I think you kind of have to watch it with that context. But it's like if that film came out now and everyone's like, oh, this is horrible, this is nonsense, this and that. So it's sort of like, I do agree with Coppola in the way that he talks a lot about it. He makes a lot of comparisons, not just in this film, but in interviews to Jacques Tati's Playtime, of just sort of putting all his money into this passion project, and then he dies kind of broke, but making the film he wants to make. And that's kind of what I'm talking about with the sincerity of making a film like this. Of, I don't, if everyone is just going to dog on and make fun of like every, out there film or anything like that, it's sort of like, that's why we get so many kind of generic safe films, even if they're good, or it's sort of like, are you really going to remember them? And that's really up to you. But I think Megalopolis is such a miracle of a film. The fact that it not only comes out, but in my opinion, is actually pretty solid. And Coppola acknowledges, and the actors acknowledge, how big and how strange the film is. You get a sense at times in the documentary that even a lot of the actors aren't totally sure what is going on with it, but they're trusting in Coppola's vision to do it. And I think even just visually, there's just some incredible sequences in the film. They show, one of the things I like, they show some of the times when they're filming a scene and they show the finished product of it. And Coppola is very adamant in doing like in-camera tricks, as opposed to overly reliant on CG, which the film also never tries to portray Coppola as just this, as somebody who is always right about everything, because there are times you're watching this and you can see the frustration, or you can see kind of some of the other crew sort of trying to get through to him about certain things, but he's very adamant in his ways, maybe not to the benefit of production. Because there's like one part in the documentary they talk about this trick they're trying to do with Adam Driver's character, who takes a bandage off and this light kind of beams from his eye. Now visually you could just do it one way, with like visual effects, do it one way, but Coppola, because he wants to do these in-camera kind of tricks like he did for Bram Stoker's Dracula, that film has a lot of really incredible in-camera tricks. It ends up maybe unnecessarily delaying production for something that they can do. So you can understand the frustration on it. This isn't a case where it, you can view this documentary in one of many ways, where you can watch something like Hearts of Darkness, and you can see that, okay, well, at least you get a film like Apocalypse Now out of this, because this is a divisive film, and I think a lot of people don't really like it. But so you can watch it as, oh, Coppola's, he's doing his own thing and he makes this terrible movie. But I see it as somebody who is really dedicated to his vision and made one of the most interesting films of recent memory that I'm still thinking about. I haven't seen it since the theaters, and do, in part one intentionally, and two, because there isn't a U.S. Release of this. There is a UK 4K, which I'm just about ready to import at this point, because watching this documentary really made me want to rewatch that film with context. And Utopia released the documentary. I really like Utopia as a line. I would imagine they're probably going to put this out on Blu-ray as well, but I really like a lot of the films they've put out, at least the ones they've put out on home video, on Blu-ray. I talked a while ago about like Vortex by Gaspar Noé, and they put out other stuff. Like The Civil Dead was one I really liked a lot. What was that one? Maybe I'm thinking of something else. But either way, I think some of the strongest parts of the documentary as well, I really like seeing kind of the back and forth between Coppola's and Shia LaBeouf's sort of ideas at how they want to go about it. Because both of them, I think, are very, maybe not stuck in their ways, but they have very enthusiastic ideas about how they want to go about it. And at points, you can see Coppola's frustration, where it's just something simple that LaBeouf maybe is taking to another level that doesn't need to be, but I really liked it. I really liked that part of the movie. I think you could have made a documentary about those two. They have a great kind of back and forth in this film, because they're both right in what they're doing, but they're just going at it from different ways. And LaBeouf especially has one line, one part he's talking to the camera at the end that made me laugh out loud. I'm still thinking about it now. I won't give it away. Just him and Coppola getting in an argument, and then him reading an email that Coppola sent him it made me laugh out loud. It was really funny. I think even if you don't like Megalopolis, if you didn't like the film, or maybe if you haven't even seen it, I think you still appreciate this documentary just as somebody who is putting their money where their mouth is. You know, we're especially at a point now. We're at a point where, you know, if Martin Scorsese has trouble getting a movie like The Irishman made, or I read, you know, a little while ago, Todd Solondz been having trouble getting his next film financed. It's like George Romero, when he was trying to make Land of the Dead, couldn't get financing. It's like, it's kind of insane that these, you know, the kind of legendary filmmakers are having this kind of trouble. So for Coppola to really kind of put himself out there and make something that may not be commercially viable and may, you know, would even be laughed at by a lot of people, I think is so much more bold than somebody playing it really safe and making a stronger film, but something that's far more disposable. Because they really don't talk about any of the reception of the film, which I think would have been kind of interesting. I mean, he talks at the beginning basically about, you know, if this is what he wants to make, regardless of how it, you know, is perceived. And they go up to when it premieres at Cannes, and they really, it ends a little abruptly, I will say. It's a little like, oh, movie's over. But with that said, no, I think this is, it's one that the more I've thought about it, I really do like this documentary a lot. My enjoyment of Megalopolis aside, I'm just so fascinated by Coppola as a person. I just love people who are passionate about something, you know, whatever it is. I think of, like, you know, something like that Tetris documentary I talked about a while ago, and these group of people were so passionate about Tetris, and they had this great camaraderie, and they just loved Tetris so much. Or this other one, Man vs. Snake, about these guys who just loved this game. I forgot what game it was. It was like this video game where it's not the game Snake. It's like a different, like, lesser known one. I forgot what it's called. But these people who are really into like this one thing, and that's what Coppola is. He's really, you know, he's putting everything on the line for this film that he wants to make, and I think that is so much more bold and respectable. And you know, whether or not it's good or bad, that's your prerogative, or like or dislike. You know, good or bad is completely subjective. But just doing something like this at this point in his career is just so admirable. I really like this documentary a lot, and I thought Mike Figgis did a good job with it. There's a couple parts where he puts himself in it where I don't think he needed to. But I get why he did that, kind of talking about maybe there's a couple times where the actors, sort of agents, don't want, you know, there's a weird thing with one of the actresses in the film, Natalie Emmanuel, where the agent is being kind of weird towards Mike Figgis and doesn't want him filming her at certain times or something like that. But it was great hearing everybody kind of talk about it, and you can tell that even if they don't all completely understand what's going on, there's still that love for Coppola and what he's doing, and there is that feeling of just, you know, making this kind of insane, crazy sort of project. And Megadoc, yeah, I assume that Utopia is going to put this out on Blu-ray. I'll pick up the Blu-ray for sure. I'd love to watch some deleted scenes or deleted interviews on this. And hopefully, you know, it'd be really cool if Utopia could actually put out Megalopolis as well, because that's a Lionsgate film, and Lionsgate have not been having the strongest of luck in the past couple of years. They've been doing really poorly financially. I think, you know, once I read they sold off the Saw franchise, that's when I knew that things were especially getting in tricky waters. I think the only franchise they have now, it's probably the Hunger Games. I mean, they have John Wick as well, but Ballerina underperformed. And I don't know how the last Hunger Games did, the prequel one. I don't know what it was called, Songbirds and something. Or maybe that's a new one coming out. I have no idea. But I'd love to see, I don't know, I'd love to see a release of this. If not, I'll just import it at this point. But really good stuff. Good documentary, and that kind of leads me into another documentary I want to talk about briefly. It's funny, I say briefly, and then here I am, you know, going on for half the episode about it. But this is one that I found off Tubi, called Tulsa Terrors. This came out just this year, actually. It's funny because this is one that it was one I kind of just threw on. I didn't really expect much of it, and it actually ended up being, like Megadoc, kind of one of my favorite things I've seen this year. It's about this this one area in, it was in Tulsa. So we have this, let me get some of the information here, actually. It was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I forgot where Tulsa was for a second, good lord. But basically this film, Blood Cult, comes out in 1985. I believe it was shot on video, a low-budget horror film, and kind of this, you know, it's filmed in Tulsa, and then from there, it's they interview a lot of filmmakers who, you know, live in Tulsa, who are making films out of that area. And it, you know, it jumps around to different people, kind of telling their stories about making these films you know, into the 80s and the 90s and stuff, and sort of just like the market for it at the time of these films being viable and financially viable. And the great thing about watching a documentary like this is that a lot of I think almost all of the films they talked about, I hadn't even seen. I'm not, I like, I mean, I do like shot on video films quite a bit, but a lot of these I hadn't seen. I don't know if all of them are shot on video because then they go into like the early 2000s as well. But the thing with this film, and actually I'm looking at the cover right here for the Blu-ray, and they talk about Terror at 10 Killer, which I have seen, and actually Vinegar Syndrome has a Blu-ray of that. And I don't remember them talking about it truthfully. But this kind of what I'm talking about with Megadoc, which is why I wanted to talk about this film briefly, is that I just love people who are passionate, and everyone in this documentary I think is just so likable, and it's just so fun to hear their stories about working on these films that they know are tricky to make. You know, it's sort of like they're aware that the shortcomings are there, and they talk about there's one part that actually made me laugh out loud where they're talking about I forgot what film it was. I think it was The Ripper, with Tom Savini. And they, I forgot what exactly it was. They mentioned that I think his character is supposed to be right-handed or left-handed. I forgot which one it was. But anyways, they have a scene where he's attacking somebody with the wrong hand, and they're watching it back. They're like, oh my gosh, we did the wrong hand. What are we going to do? So when they put it out after the fact, not in the original release, but on the updated release, they actually flip the image. They just flip the shot, and I think that's just just stuff like that I just find so charming and just so fun. It's like, oh, just flip the shot. It's just, no one's going to notice. But I just love hearing the people kind of talk about the makings of these films. They talk about ones like on the cover here: Revenge, Blood Cult, The Ripper, like I said, Terror at 10 Killer, The Sticker, and the only one I've seen is Terror at 10 Killer. But the love that they have for making these films really comes through. That they talk about the highs and the lows of making these films, sort of the boom in these direct-to-video films that you can just, you got a good poster, you can put it on the video shelf, boom, there you go. And a lot of them, I think, the ratio to good ones to not so good ones, I think you really gotta, kind of gauge at your own perspective, because I have some acquaintances who really talk up some of these films, and ones that some of the ones I have seen, I'm not totally for me, so to speak. But that's fine. It doesn't really matter, because the way that they talk about it, the way they go on, and they talk about, we only had an actor for this day, so we had to shoot the scenes here, or we really couldn't get anyone big, so we had to kind of, work around this. And I just love hearing these kinds of stories. I love hearing these people talk about, sort of just the challenges that come with it, but also, the rewards of it, and sort of where that goes to. Because now, even in the early 2000s, I remember being at, if you guys remember Movie Gallery, just some of like the smaller kind of films that were able to get on the shelves. And I even remember some of the stuff like the Ryan Nicholson films that were on the shelf. I remember specifically like Live Feed was one that was on the shelf. And there's one movie I always remember. It's called San Fran Psycho. I think not Martin Sheen. Oh my gosh, who's Martin Sheen's brother? He was on, oh my gosh, what is his name? It was cracking me up. He was on, Joe Estevez, that's what it was. Yeah, it's like, I remember this ridiculous cover. I mean, these are just like cheap movies, and Todd Bridges is in it, and just these cheap kind of movies that you can get on the shelf, and you see that title, you're like, San Fran Psycho, you see that cover, you're like, what is this? That just like cracks me up, but in an earnest way. It's like I'm watching these films, and they're all very earnest about it, because they're not trying to make something bad. And I think if you're just trying to make a bad movie, and people enjoy it, that's fine. Whatever. I'm just not interested in that. I am far more interested in somebody falling completely on their face with a project, but they put their all into it. They put their sincerity into it, instead of just falling back on, it's supposed to be bad, this and that. It's one thing if you're making a comedy, and maybe you're doing something like, oh, we're going to make it like extra silly and this and that. I mean, if you're trying to make something serious, or you're trying to make something that you're not just trying to half-ass, that passion, I think, really can come through, because everybody talks about, oh, Ed Wood made these terrible movies. Ed Wood was trying to be Orson Welles. He wasn't trying to make these low budget kind of schlocky movies. He was really shooting for the stars, and whether or not you like or dislike those films, he put his all into them. He had a way of making movies that was fast, and whether or not they're good or bad, I mean, these are the movies that he wanted to make. These are the ones that he actually cared about, and didn't just try to be like, oh, it doesn't matter if, it's not good. I always love that line in Ed Wood. I'm gonna mess it up, but it's when Lobo he walks right into the wall, and he goes through the door, and the wall just shakes, and one of the guys is like, your actor just walked into the wall, and I forgot what Johnny Depp said. I'm gonna mess it up, but he says something like, no, that's real. That's something he would have to face every day. It's just like, I just love that. I mean, I understand that Ed Wood is not a completely accurate film. My point is, though, if you're trying to make something good and it comes out bad, that's why I don't want to just dog on movies, man. Not because I'm like, oh, don't be negative about movies. I'm just saying that if it's something that somebody wants to make, I don't find joy in just knocking down a film. I mean, I know people love the so bad it's good stuff. And listen, there's plenty of those movies I love, Things is like one of my favorite movies, and Samurai Cop is just so silly. But these are not films I enjoy laughing at. I mean, yeah, they're silly, and the flaws are obvious, but the way I've always seen it is if they bring you joy and they bring you entertainment, to me, that's not a bad movie. So, like, when I say Things, by Barry J. Gillis, or I know he didn't direct it, but it's basically his film. I forgot who actually did direct Things. But either way, that's a film that I love, and I love that sincerely because it brings me so much joy, and I love watching it with people, and I love showing it to them because they're like, well, hey, what is this movie? So I can't call it bad because of how much joy it's brought me. I've seen higher brow, quote unquote, art films or studio films that are technically competent, have this and that, and are, A24 movies or Neon movies or, Paramount, Warner Bros. And I like Things better than some of those, because just because of the reaction that it gives me and the joy that it brings me. So Tulsa Terrors is one that I was, expecting probably just a lot of, something. Tubi gives you a lot of documentaries that you just, you really got to kind of sort through a lot of ones that aren't very good, but this was one that I was really kind of taken aback on. Not so much in the way that I was with like Blood, Boobs, and Beast about Don Doler, which I was just like, I'm still like, wow, I love that documentary of just how honest it is and how how realistic it is in trying to make one of these independent films, but in the way that just hearing them talk about it and hearing them go on about it, it's like this film, I don't think anyone's talking about this documentary. This has a Blu-ray from VCI, but this doesn't even have an IMDb page. There's not a poster on Letterboxd. Let me look on Letterboxd. I think only a couple people have logged this. There's 12 people who have logged it, including me. And I don't know. I think it'd be good to kind of get some more eyes on this, especially if you are into this sort of stuff. If you're into these kinds of movies, then I think it'd be good to. But even if you're not, if you're like me, who I don't really know a lot about these movies. I mean, I've heard of like Blood Cult and I've seen Terror at 10 Killer, but a lot of them I looked at after the fact. I'm like, I don't know these movies, but I still just had so much fun hearing these people talk about it. So it's on Tubi. Check out the Blu-ray as well. Actually, I'd be willing to pick up the Blu-ray. It's only $15, and I'd be curious if there are any bonus features or anything like that. And actually, this is coming out on October 21st. At the time of this recording on Blu-ray, so I don't know if there are any features or not with this, but I did like this one actually a lot. So Tulsa Terrors is if especially if you're into wanting to direct, or you're into these or making a film, or even if you're just like these low budget kind of direct-to-video movies, then yeah, I say just go for it, man. I really like this documentary. Tubi is such a grab bag. You'll either get some really exceptional stuff, or you'll just get some absolute nonsense. Some of the ones I've been watching, I just get recommended just the most bizarre stuff sometimes from Tubi. But I love it. I just find so much cool random stuff on Tubi, and I just really some stuff is very cheap, some stuff is very much like a YouTube video, but a lot of them I do think are really cool, man. And it's funny, actually, one of the ones I watched as well was In Search of All-American Massacre, about the Lost Texas Chainsaw film from 2022. And it was interesting watching this one because I know just recently, and if you don't know, with All-American Massacre, it was, I'm not going to go into the whole thing of it, but it's Bill Moseley, who played Chop Top in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Fan favorite character. Bill Moseley was going to come back, and they actually filmed, I don't know, I might get the story messed up, so don't quote me on it, but they filmed it, but it's never seen the light of day. There's been footage that's out there of like a trailer, I think, but to this day, it has never been fully released. And people have, and the documentary goes over, what the history of it. I think it spends a little too much time in the first part going over the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and like how much it means to the filmmakers, which, it's a great film, but it's sort of like he already. I think they could have been a little bit more brief with it in that regard. Now, it's funny. IMDb says this documentary is from 2000, but I don't think... Oh, no, I'm sorry. My bad. I clicked on the wrong page. The documentary is from 2022. The film is from 2000. So anyways, but yeah, you can tell they're all fans of this. They want to see what's going on with this. But even recently, what I was trying to talk about, what I was trying to find here, is on eBay in the past couple months or so, it was not... There was a listing on eBay of a VHS that wasn't the movie, but it was something that... It was like... Oh, what the hell was it? It was some... okay, I'm actually looking here. Unedited scenes that equal an hour or so. And let me see if I can actually find the listing on this, because it got sold... I don't know for how much. It says... $8,500, but it said best offer accepted, so I don't know how much it is. But let's see what it says here. This listing is for a rare piece of horror movie history, a VHS tape with original unedited footage from, I think he meant to say All American Massacre. A couple years back, I bought a storage locker at auction of a man named Stephen Locock. He was an executive producer and one of the actors for this project. In the unit was okay. The tape shows... Okay, this VHS tape is not the complete movie, unfortunately, and it is made up of entirely unedited footage. For most of the tape, you can hear the director and crew talking. There are plenty of behind-the-scenes shots of the characters, as well as being goofy. The tape shows 3 to 4 scenes from the movie. The first 2 involve Bill Moseley attacking and killing 3 people, and the final scene showed Leatherface outside. Although not complete, this is by far the most footage of the film ever available. I'd speculated around an hour or more footage. My VHS doesn't say time. A few notes about the tape. I like how this is part of the episode now. I'm just reading off an eBay listing. A few notes about the tape. At one point, it randomly cut to a clip of the X-Files. After about 5 minutes, it cut right back to the footage, and at the very end, there's about 15 minutes of the Drew Carey roast. I have no idea why these are on the tape, but I want to make it clear, this is not the movie, and it is entirely unedited. I do not expect to receive the finished project. In my opinion, there's not any edited version of the film made. I also have no other tapes of the movie, and I didn't make any backup copies, so if you buy this, you're the sole owner. Boy, I think you probably should have made a backup copy, especially if it's going to a sole owner. Yeah, so let's hope that footage gets online. I have no idea. I have no idea. They talk about why the film has been unreleased. I mean, Tobe Hooper has since passed. He didn't direct the film, but I think there might have been some licensing issues where, because they don't own the Chop Top character name. I mean, you could have just... I think the way you could have done it was just maybe not had it be Chop Top, like just be a character that's basically Chop Top, but call him something. Maybe don't even call him that, just call him something else. But then again, you have Leatherface in the movie, you have Grandpa in the movie, and Buckethead was involved in this, funnily enough. I think Buckethead actually plays Leatherface in the film. Buckethead from... I mean, he's a famous musician. He was in Guns N' Roses, a famous guitarist, but interesting stuff. Again, this is one on Tubi that kind of just popped up, and I guess I don't even really have that much to say about it, but I wanted to kind of just mention it briefly, just because I've been talking about these documentaries. So Tubi is just a fun grab bag. It's like, it's free, so you really got nothing to lose. And I just love discovering these kinds of movies on Tubi. Like I said, Tulsa Terrors was really good. Check out the In Search of All American Massacre, and then Megadoc, I imagine will be on Blu-ray or readily available. Hopefully soon, at the time of this recording, but take it as it comes. But yeah, love documentaries, love talking about them, and love recommending them. And anyways, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. I appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate you guys. If this is your first time listening, thank you. If you've listened before and you've come back, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, sincerely. I just want to talk about these films. I want to, turn you guys on to films or put films in your general kind of conscious, because now if I go to watch these films made out of Tulsa, I have the context of the documentary, so that adds a new layer instead of just like, oh, I came across this movie and it's crappy, this and that. It's like, no, now we have context of it. But anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap that up here. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back next time, so take care.